Well, let's check in with the markets now. It closed in the red this afternoon, at least the local market. Still some apprehension internationally about the spread of the Delta variant of COVID-19. Globally, banks were up, but huge losses on heavyweights, Naspers and Process. I want to bring in Gary Booysen from Rand Swiss to give us more insights on that. Gary, quite a quiet business news day today, but it's interesting to see that the big players, or the heavyweights, Naspers and Process, pulling down the local market because of their sheer size. What's behind that?
Yeah, so if we look at it, part of today's quieter news day was the 4th of July weekend public holiday, which is obviously rolled over to Monday. So we have got the US closed this evening, which is taking some of the volume out of the market. But as you said, generally the market's slightly lower with the Aussie down, just over 0.2%, but that all driven by essentially Naspers and Process, which were each down roughly around 6%. So part of this, there's a number of factors that are contributing to this. So on the one side, you've got, I suppose, the very complex share swap deal that's coming out of Naspers and Process that's due for voting at the end of the week. I think that's, maybe just taking a bit of the shine off for investors. But the news today, there was two things. So the one was the cybersecurity investigation into the ride-hailing app Didi, which is a Chinese competitor to Uber. And I think markets just getting a little bit concerned around, just the heavy-handed action of some of the Chinese regulators. So this was specifically the Cyberspace Administration of China, which is also investigating some truck hailing apps and a couple of other websites. They're taking a little bit of a shine off the Tencent listing in Hong Kong, which was down almost 4%, and that obviously feeding straight into the Naspers Process listing. But probably more importantly, there was also a news story that didn't make it onto the news feeds, but there's a potential investigation of Huya and Douyu. I probably butchered those two names, which are the two largest video game streaming websites in China. Tencent was basically trying to formally combine them, and that does seem like it's been blocked. Because of that block, that's also going to affect Tencent's share price, which is obviously very dependent on gaming revenue.
Mm-hmm. And then, Gary, look, we're into another week, and the Rand still staying above 14 Rand to the US dollar. I mean, I remember those days not so long ago. In fact, 3 weeks ago, we were riding this 13 Rand 50 range. It looks like it's going to be somewhat more difficult to get back into that range, particularly what's happening with COVID-19 locally, I would imagine.
I think domestic factors are definitely a part of it. So, when you're looking at something like the Rand-dollar pair, or the Rand against the pound or the euro, of course, there's all the factors that are influenced by international markets. But at the moment, a couple of big banknotes today, really just referencing domestic factors. So on the one side, as you said, this third wave is starting to bite. We've got a very poor vaccination rate compared to the US. If you remember, Biden was trying to target around 70% of Americans vaccinated by the 4th of July. They didn't make it, but they got close. That's, fully vaccinated, but just under 50% of the population. You compare that to South Africa, which, I stand to be corrected, but our fully vaccinated population under 1% of the population. So, certainly this is going to drag on economic growth. I think it's going to make it more difficult for the Reserve Bank also to increase interest rates, which is starting to be needed if you compare us to some of our emerging market peers. The likes of Russia, Mexico, Brazil, they've all started the interest rate tightening cycles already, which make them a little bit more competitive when large international money managers are looking to park funding in the emerging markets. And, that's strengthening their currencies, but leaving us a little bit on the back foot. And, with the troubling, COVID-19 numbers, and certainly over the weekend, more than 26,000 cases on Saturday, that tends to spook investors. And I think that's just lending a little bit of softness to our local currency.
I mean, Gary, before I let you go, I was going to chat to you about that oil price very quickly, and I see fittingly what's happened is that we've got another increase in the petrol price as a direct result of two factors. One, the weak Rand, and the increasing oil price. I'm still going through the numbers here, but it does look like this oil price is going to give us a bit of a hassle with regards to more fuel prices. We know there's an increase on Wednesday.
No, maybe an increase on Wednesday, but that's, I suppose, what the big OPEC meeting that there's been all this disagreement about over the last couple of days. And traders are looking at it today again, just trying to get some sort of resolution. What we have is, essentially OPEC plus members looked like they had agreed to allow, 2 million barrels per day additional output. Obviously, they've got the supply curves in place to adjust for the collapse in demand of over the last year and a half, thanks to the pandemic. But the market really wants to see more oil coming on stream, and they're maintaining those supply curves. One of the countries that are actually blocking the final agreement of the lifting of some of those curbs is the UAE. And now what happens is if we can't get an agreement between the OPEC plus members, now there is the potential that everyone just decides to pump and it will become a free-fall, almost like we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, which might actually pull oil prices all the way back down from the kind of $76 a barrel level that we're seeing at the moment. If that happens, hopefully we'll see petrol prices coming down a little bit. But while OPEC is still negotiating what we're going to see in terms of supply, we have seen U.S. rig count starting to increase as well. So while the U.S. it's more difficult for them to bring on production, obviously under the Biden administration than it was under Trump, but we're slowly seeing those rig counts starting to increase, which means that there is more supply coming out, and hopefully that means good news at the pumps for us in a couple of months' time. And hopefully good news in terms of, more subdued inflation globally.
Yep, you hear you there, Gary Booysen from Rand Swiss. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. Incidentally, that good news couldn't come this Wednesday. 29 cents for 93 octane petrol. That's an increase, 26 cents of an increase for 95. Diesel goes up by around 41 to 42 cents.